Okay, so first of all, good morning, everyone, and I'm glad that we're able to actually start on time this week without any, excuse me, glitches. Let's hope no more glitches. Let's not drink it. But we are smack in the middle of this very interesting topic. It's sort of a two-phase conversation that we have going on over here. On one hand, we're still talking about the laws of proper conduct. We're not talking about necessarily anymore for now, and in this section, we're not necessarily talking about, the typical gossip kind of things that we're talking about beforehand. You know something bad about someone, you want to talk about it, we're just refraining from speaking evil about other people. We are now in the category where there is a toelis to a certain degree, right? We're in the category of how far does toelis go? What does toelis mean again? Toelis means to say that there's a positive reason, a constructive reason why you might need to say what you have to say. The question is, what are the boundaries of that? How far does it go, right? And the reason behind toelis, just a little background, right? And we're going to talk about it in this halacha. We're going to just expand on these words for a minute. There's something called that you're not allowed to stand idle, right, while your friend is being hurt, right? You're not allowed to stand idle while your friend is being hurt. The verse in the Torah is, do not stand aside while your fellow's blood is being shed, right? Not stand on the side of when your blood of your friend is being shed. So of course, we're not talking about over here a literal bleeding of blood, right? But when someone is hurt in any way, and you have the opportunity to stop that, you have an obligation to do that. Just in general, right? In general, you're going down the street and you see someone about to get hurt. You have an obligation to stop and help that person out. He or she, a child or an adult, right? You have that obligation to help someone out. And make sure that they don't get hurt. Someone is scamming people, right? You have an obligation to let people know, or to let that individual know, say, listen, that's a scam. Stay away from it, right? So there's an obligation of standing idle while your friend's blood is being spilled, right? Is not necessarily referring to literal blood, right? Of course, right, that you have to stop, right? But it's talking in general. And this is an attitude, we're going to get to the halacha in a minute, but I just want to expand on this a little bit. This is really an attitude that seems simple, but really something that our society is really, it's a foreign concept to our society to a certain degree, because this is the polar opposite of being revolved around yourself. Right? When one is revolved around themselves, right? There's a study done, a couple of these studies done, and there's a couple of videos going around. I don't know exactly who made them, but the point is still there, right? It was an act. Whatever the company did it. Someone dressed up like someone that was hurt or whatever it is, and they tripped on a very busy street in one of the main walkway, let's say Second Avenue in New York, or I'm not saying that's where it was, but something like that, where people are constantly walking and busy. And if you stop for a second, you get mowed over, right? At least in the good old days, right? But they did this study, and most of the people just walked right by, just walked around or walked right by or didn't offer to help. And, there's a few people that did this. There's a few people that say, hey, can I help you? Do you need any help? Right? They did this also, and we see this, with homeless people that are on the side. How many people offer them something? So I'm not saying to go ahead and offer everybody everything, right? That's not what I'm saying. And you have to know, these, unfortunately, there are people, a lot of times people that stand by the light over here in Publix, right? I never give them money, right? I don't know what they're going to do with the money, right? But if I have a granola bar or something like that, or something extra that's not part of my groceries, right, that I bought for my house, right, I would give them. I would roll the window and say, hey, if you're hungry, here's something to eat, because that I don't want to put a stumbling block in front of them. I don't know what they're going to use. I'm not saying they are, but at the same time, unfortunately, we have to work with studies and what is probable going to happen, right? I'm not saying for sure going to happen. I'm not saying this individual, right? But at the same time, right? I'm not going to give them, right? But the point I'm bringing out is that this idea, right, of not standing, do not stand while your friend's blood is being spilled, idle while your fellow's blood is being spilled, right, is an idea that sounds so normal. It sounds something that's like no duh, right? When we say it in such terminologies, right? But really, practically, right? If one really stops and thinks about our daily lives, right? It's really something that is a little foreign to our society, right? It is. Okay, I'm not saying to stop every time you see someone's car on the side of their house or the road, need help, because you don't know. Unfortunately, we're living in a time when you don't know what's going to happen, right? And that's unfortunate, and that's something. But if let's say, we've done it sometimes, in a larger Jewish community, whatever it is, I've seen it. I saw it as a Jew. We pulled over, right? If it's a fellow Jew, statistically wise, I'm not concerned that they're going to hurt me, right? So therefore, it's not necessarily because of the Jew. There's a bigger obligation because it's your fellow Jew, and nothing. It's just family and connection of who we are, right? But there's also that I'm not too concerned that I'm going to get. It's a trap or whatever it is, and 98% it's not a trap. But there's just a concept of being aware and reflecting about other people's pain and suffering, or protecting them from difficulty. Unfortunately, is a little something foreign in our society, because we are very revolved around ourselves society. Even when we do charity, even when we do help other people, it's usually something that has to do with me. And usually it has something to do with I'm doing this. It's my thing. I'm going to get a reward. It revolves around me, right? Even when we're doing something nice to other people. And I'm talking in general. God forbid, there's plenty of righteous people out there, righteous Gentiles out there, righteous Jews out there, and most people don't mean to be this way. It's just part of our of how we are. Right, so just something to reflect on, right? That this idea of not standing idle while your friend's blood is being spilled, right, is something that is unfortunately more common than we think. Think about it. It's sometimes something in shul, or you see someone doing something, or you see someone need a jump, and I'm too busy, just run home, right? Or someone needs a lift, or right, whatever it is. Even these small little things, right? It's something that we have to reflect on. That is the background, right, behind why, right, there is a law of Tuelis, right? Even though I am now saying something negative about someone else, right? But since if the other person will get hurt, right, and there's a law of, right, you're not allowed to stand idle while your friend's blood is being spilled. So this is where the tug of war is, right? I just want to explain where this whole tug of war is coming from, right? Why is it that there's nuances, right, of when is it okay and when it's not okay? I mean, it should be okay, you're protecting someone else, but at the same time, you're also speaking about negative about someone else. Just because they're not the best person in the world, just because they're doing something bad doesn't mean it gives you the right to speak evil about them, right? If you weren't talking about anything that's so else, you just say, that person, he's a rotten tomato, right? They're just always talking negative about, always doing something bad. They're always hurting other people. You're not allowed to do that. Just because they're a rotten tomato, just because they're not the best people in the world, you're not allowed to just idly just talk negative about people. You're not allowed to do that either, right? So this is sort of where the struggle is coming in. Just a little background. Any questions or comments on this before we move on? Okay. Wow. Okay, great. So let's now get into an interesting case over here, right? And then we'll talk about some beautiful idea that we have to all reflect on. Okay, so we are on page 202, right? That's what I said, 202. Yeah, because we did 200 last time about the heights and the different. Because we're now talking about, right, as I was starting to say before I got explaining the concept of why the struggle is. We are now talking about where the Toelis is just these cases, but it's just a case study for other things that might be similar to this, of dating, right? Information about dating, right? So last time we spoke about if it's just a physical feature, height, right? A time beforehand we spoke about intellectual features, right? Smart, this, intellectual, artsy, whatever it is, different, that, someone has a certain way, but and you think it's really going to work out. So do you have to give them beforehand or not, right? Now we're going to talk about something a little more serious, right? Something a little more serious, in a little different perspective, but something that is very common, right? Something that happens very often. And this is something also that will happen a lot of times to people that are not necessarily learned, right? And therefore, right, it's something that really have to reflect on. What is this? This is something like this, dilemma. Okay, a girl's mother calls a boy's learning partner and asks, right? So, the mother, as I explained beforehand, this is based off, this book is written by religious people, and in a more religious environment, right? That's the way I had it, right? There's usually someone, setting you up, and usually not usually, but a lot of times the parents do research for the child, right? Not that they can continue studying, continue doing things, and they do some research, right, before they even start dating, right? Even before they start dating, just get some basic things out of the way, because dating is with a purpose of getting married, right? Not just to have a good time. So the mother calls the boy's learning partner, wants to know about the guy, right? Says, do you see him as the type of boy who will remain in yeshiva for a long term, right? Do you see him learning for a long time? Now, right, this is not a negative thing or a positive thing. It depends on what the person is. If the partner's opinion is negative, may he answer the question honestly, or is it lashon hara? Right. So this is a little interesting case, right? I don't like this. As I mentioned before, sometimes I don't like the exact scenario to give. Let's just give a better example, right? Does he have a temper, right? Does he have a temper, right? And does he have a temper, right? So the question is, what are you? He has a little temper, right? Not so bad, right? Or is he going to be, and this just for example, the question that they ask is not bad or good. It's just a different lifestyle, right? It's a different lifestyle, right? Someone might want someone that's going to sit and learn their whole life, right? They want to be involved in learning style of living, right? In kollel or becoming a rabbi or whatever it is. And someone else wants someone that's going to, of course, have a charusa and a study partner, but they want someone that is going to go to work. So it's not really positive or negative, but the person's opinion is themselves of, it's an opinion, right? So we're talking about something that it has a little factual base, but it's also an opinion of someone, right? That's what we're talking about. So what do you guys think? Change it to if they ask it.
Okay, this is Jim. You knew I'd start.
Hi, Jim. Welcome back. Nice to have you back.
Thank you. Okay, so this young man you're asking, his partner is the one they're considering dating, I guess their daughter or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's improper that they would ask the study partner, because I think that's a close relationship. And it's just improper they would ever ask him those kinds of questions about his study partner.
Okay. I hear where you're coming from, but that is something that is done because, as you said, they have a close relationship, and a study partner better, right? And it's not always a study partner. Sometimes it's a roommate. Sometimes it's
So if let's go on the premise that that's done, and it's normal. If I were the study partner, I would be as broad as possible. Does he have a temper? He's a passionate person. I would not try to, I would try to be as neutral as I could because of the relationship I would have with them. And even if I didn't have that relationship, I would try to, what you have taught all of us this whole time is you never know what's going on with other people, even your study partners. I'd say you have a very close relationship, but making disparaging remarks about anybody needs to be only done, to me, when it is a safety issue or an extreme issue. Let's say a study partner has been known to hit other people frequently. That's different.
Right, and I hear your point, and I'm not saying you're right or wrong. Right? I'm just going to throw out something, and then we'll go to Bonnie. I see she has her hand up. Right.
Thank you.
I'll just want to point out one point is that we are talking about a sensitive situation over here. We're going to set two people up, right, that might live the rest of their lives together, and it might be something that comes out every once in a while. So it's nice if you're trying to protect your friend, but at the same time, right, you also can't stand, and that's sort of why I gave this whole introduction, this dilemma. You can't stand aside if someone else might get hurt, right, from it. Right, so
I agree with that.
Talking about a random person or business partner or whatever it is, that's one thing, and we spoke about those things. But if we're talking about someone that will, spend the rest of their lives together, hopefully, or it won't end up spending the rest of their lives together, and it'll be a heartache of divorce or whatever it is, right? So then that's part. You might not be doing your friend a favor, right? Or you might not be doing that person a favor. And again, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just throwing out another perspective of how to look at it. Okay,
I agree. Well, I think this is not the time to be neutral. I think you have to, but I'm reading this. Do you see? So the girl's mother calls a boy's learning partner. I think that's totally inappropriate.
Okay, so that's what Jim said. That's what Jim said. It is dumb.
But I think
if it's appropriate or not appropriate.
But the question can be asked, but I don't think, to ask another young bacha, that to me is not right. But I don't think, I agree with you, Rabbi. This is not the time to be neutral in our conversation. I mean, that's it.
Hey, Suzette? I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So just my thoughts are, I think that in a situation like this or any situation similar, you use wisdom and you, as you said, look at what the relationship is. But I think from the broader perspective, what I find, at least in the world that we live in, is, in situations where I'd say it calls for, the courage to be honest, it's hard because you just feel as if you're probably stepping on toes or treading somewhere you shouldn't go. And I think that we need to be able to find that courage, even when it's a difficult circumstance, not even, particularly this one, to speak to the truth using wisdom. So that's what I'd add.
Okay, good. I like that. Anybody else? Emily, I was going to say you were being quiet today. Go ahead.
Quiet, uncharacteristically quiet.
Go ahead. No, your character is not quiet. That's what I said today. You're being quiet. All right, go ahead.
I think when it comes to something like a temper, I mean, isn't it true that like when it comes to shidduchim that you're supposed to by the way, I also happen to agree that it's really weird that they're asking like the boy's learning partner. That doesn't sit well with me either. But that aside, aren't you supposed to be honest when it comes to like shidduchim is like the one area where you're allowed to like speak and say something and it's not considered lashon hara. So I'm not really sure. I'm just saying, like, wasn't that one of the areas that you're supposed to say the truth? Like that's one of the areas where we're supposed to speak the truth.
Okay, so yes, it is, because as we said, we have the toelis, we have a very strong toelis over here, right? You don't want someone to go into a marriage, or and a lot of times it's also for the guy or the girl, whoever's asking the question, right? Whoever's being the one that's asking about who, right? You're not necessarily always doing the person a favor, right, by not saying the complete truth about the individual, because you're just going to put soul or her in a situation later on that's going to be a little more difficult, right? That is 100% true, and that's why we have this whole dilemma. The question over here is, and and I'm going to address in a second what you guys are all struggling with a little bit and bothered with a little bit, right? But just to reinforce, and then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and see what they say. We'll expand on it a little bit, right? But that is exactly the struggle. Right. In a normal situation, if someone just calls you up and say, "Hey, I'm looking to rent my house to this person. I want to know if they're an angry person." What does that have anything to do with if you're renting the house? You want to know if they're going to pay their rent on time. Okay, that's one thing, right? If you want to know if they're, they're going to, they're going to trash the house, that's one thing. But just wanting to know, about their personality, that's nothing to do with the renting the house. So you just say, listen, they're a good person, whatever. It's not the situation to answer them. But in this situation, as you said, it is, because we're talking about shidduchim, we're talking about people getting together. But at the same time, just to home in on the type of questions that's being asked over here is something that's a little bit of an opinion. Right, something that's a little bit of an opinion, and that's why, that's why I said it. The way they pose the question, the case that they pose, okay, it may not be the best situation. The reason why they did it as the study partner, right, and not the rabbi, is because that's part of the answer that they're giving. It is not necessarily appropriate to ask the study partner these kind of questions. Typically, that's not the kind of questions that is asked to the study partner. Usually, they ask, is he a good friend? Is he someone that helps other people, right? Usually, you want to, because you want to get the perspective of his friends, right? You want to see, what kind of, how does it, you could a lot of times tell answers by the things that are not said or how the answer is being answered. If you are good at this, right, you could tell a lot of times the reluctancy of people answering questions or the enthusiasm of answering the question, right? Even if you might not be getting a direct answer, right? But it's important to see how his friends, his age group sees him. Right, it's a different perspective than how a rabbi might, see him. So there is an idea of calling up, friends and finding out, right? This particular question is not necessarily appropriate, and that is correct, right? For the person to ask this type of question, right? There are appropriate kind of questions, more like friends kind of questions, and then there's questions that are not necessarily appropriate for a friend to be asked, right? And so if you go ahead and you look in the answer, all right, in factual matters, a reference about, right, important relevant facts such as bad temper, right? In matters that are principal rather than report, right? In the matters that are principal rather than report a negative fact, the reference should say, "I don't know." Right? It is not necessarily lying, right? You say, "I don't know," right? Or you say, I haven't seen this, in this way, or whatever it is, right? It depends on if the person has a bad temper and is known, everything triggers him or her, right? Everything triggers him. So then you have to say, listen, he's a great guy, she's a great girl, right? But there are things that he gets triggered very quickly. It's very likely that, the right girl is the one that's gonna be able to tame him, or the right guy will be able to tame her, or whatever it is, right? But at the same time, he or she has great other character traits, but temper is something that he or she is working on, right? It's something that they struggle with. If it's something that's apparent, something that's factual, something that it happens all the time. And you're right, it's not necessarily, we don't know what's being triggered, right? But right now, right, we're not talking about judging the person. Right now, we're talking about giving information to someone that might get hurt, right? This is facts, right? This is not judging, right? The facts are that this person gets triggered very quickly, right? That's the facts. Not necessarily hitting or anything like that, right? That's of course, right? But someone that gets frustrated very, very quickly, and that's a fact, and it's known. Why that happens, I don't know. And you know what? God forbid, we're not judging someone. That's not what we're talking about right now. That we've talked about in the past. We're not talking about judging people. We're talking about the facts of someone needs to know if they should get into this situation or not. Right now, if it's something, right, when someone asks you of an opinion, and that's sort of why they pose the question this way, the opinion, what do you think? Is it going to be like this? Are you going to be like that? Right? When one asks for an opinion, reference should not venture into territories that is different or quantified, right? Instead, refer to the question to the rabbi, the rebbe, a teacher, someone with wisdom and experience, right, to address this situation, right, this serious situation. So that is why the question, the way the question is being posed, and the Talmud does this a lot of times too, and that's where they're getting it from, right, is that we pick a situation, we create a situation that's not necessarily the best situation. It might not even happen that often, right? But it allows you to dissect the situation and learn out many different things. So number one, right, if you notice, the question they asked was an opinion, right? It's not a fact. We have no idea, right? It's not a fact. Even the kid said that he wants to learn for the rest of his life, or right? He's still raw, he's still young, right? It's more of an opinion. If he's clearly stated, this is what I want to do, so that's a fact. But if you want to know what your thoughts are, what kind of boy is he, right? Or what kind of girl is she, right? That's an opinion, right? Number two, right? They specifically said that we're talking about the study partner because this is not a situation where the study partner should say something, right? You're right, it shouldn't be asked, right? But we are trying to bring out in a different situation if it's done and how it's done and what we're supposed to scenarios. What is your opinion, right? What are your thoughts, right? What kind of, right? Do not answer those questions, right? Unless you have the intellect, the knowledge, and the wisdom how to answer that properly, and you have a keen understanding of that individual, right? Which would be more of a rabbi, a teacher, a rebbe, right? A close confidant that's an older person that you might have a relationship with, like one of the other rabbis there, right? Someone that you would have that confidant, right, and have that knowledge and the wisdom of how to also answer that question. But things that are factual, right? Things that are straight out factual, even with factual things, you have to be careful how you answer those questions, right? And sometimes it's best just to say, I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know. I study with him, when we study, when we study, he's focused on his learning and, but otherwise, I don't know, right? So it's sometimes better not and it's for sure wrong to say the wrong thing. No, he doesn't have a temper. He's the nicest guy in the world, the best. That is 100% wrong, right? That's lying straight out, right? That is putting a stumbling block in front of other people. That is 100% wrong, right? In a scenario where it's, quiet. It's not, once in a while, a person has a temper, or once in a while, the person does whatever, or however, is he materialistic or not? Is he a he or she a materialistic person, right? That's a very, broad. What is materialistic, right? Having a phone, is that materialistic? For some people, materialistic is every kid in the house has their own tablet, own phone, and own car, right? It's all relevant. Right, it's all depends on. So that is not something that one should be answering, right? Unless they really have an insight into that person of having conversations and see where their view is and how they see things, right? So the answer is not a straight cut answer, as you could guess, right? With these questions, as I gave that introduction, because we're always dealing with this struggle, right? But there is a straightforward thing. If it's something that is clear cut, an opinion, not a fact, right? And you have the wisdom of how to answer that correctly, you have to, right? If it's an opinion, stay away from it unless you have that insight and the experience and the wisdom of how to answer that question, right, in a proper way. And one rule that I always do, I've been called for many times, right, for references for people, either from people here in town or not so much here in town, but in other places when I was dealing with Bahrain and Israel, right? And what I always start off with, and I got called reference also for someone for a job, right? What I always do is I say, listen, you asked me the question. They always said, oh, it's what are your opinions about this person? I said, I'm not giving you my opinions about this person. That's not how the conversations go. You have a question, I will answer your question. All right, that's how it's going to go. All right, ask me a question, right, and I'll answer your question. It's not your place to start giving a whole rant and rave around about the person, right, and say things that are not necessarily even the person asked or not asked. What is your question? If it's something that I know, I will answer. If it's something I don't know, I said that's a good question. I don't know, right? I don't know the person that way, right? I can't answer that. Right? And that's very important to be honest, right? But at the same time, right? Be making sure that you're not harming both parties because you're in a delicate situation. If you say something too much, it's a fact, but at the same time, the person's working on it, it's going to anger management. I don't know, we're just picking this case, right? But he has other, whatever it is, right? And so if you go straight, yeah, he has a temper all the time. He just gets angry, right? The word's going to spread. Unfortunately, Lashon Hara, it's very nice here. You're trying to work on your tayalas, but unfortunately, I'm not saying necessarily this person, but the word's going to spread, right? And this kid is doomed, right? A kid's working on it. It's not always. It's if it meets the right person, it's certain triggers that affect him, right? And we're not talking about, God forbid, someone that has a shotgun in his house and shoots everything, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a good person that gets who doesn't get angry once in a while, right? So this person might get angry a little more than others, right? But you have to be careful and realize that not hurting other people is not only the person that's asking the information, it's also who's being asked about the information. Therefore, you have to be very careful how you answer. And sometimes it's best just to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good handle on this. I don't know that person that well. All right, say it in a nice way. But that is the idea over here. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
A question before my comment, and my question is, in this situation, it was the mother that posed the question. Would this be a dilemma if it was the matchmaker that posed the question to the study partner?
Excellent question, right? So does it depend on who's asking the question? And the answer to a certain degree is yes, and to a certain degree, no. Meaning to say that if it's someone that is a matchmaker, you have to be much more wary answering a matchmaker, right? Because this is not only for this individual, it's going to something you have to be more wary about answering the question for protecting the person that's being asked, right? Because remember, you also have to protect the person that's being asked, right? We're not talking about a serial killer. Right, we're talking about a good person that might have, some struggles or some things, right? Which who doesn't, right? So you have to be very careful how you answer because it's not directly for a situation. It's more of a, right? It's more of a insight into this person of not just for this girl, right? It's for many girls or vice versa for a boy, right? If it's a girl that's being asked about, right? So you have to be much more careful, right? But at the same time, the rules still apply. You just have to be a lot more delicate with your answer. Where if it's someone that's asking specifically for one person, right? If it's a mother, or if it's a father, or if it's a very close friend of the person that's doing some research for this person, right? It's more likely it's just going to stay in that nucleus, and you also have to be very careful how you speak, but. You could be just a little less, I don't want to say careful, but a little more creative, right? Because it's for more an individual case. It's not a matchmaker. And I've had that, dealing with talking to a parent, right? And then talking to a matchmaker, right? You have to be a little more, you have to be on top of your game a little more of how you're answering the questions when you're speaking to a matchmaker. All right. God bless the matchmakers, and we need them. Right. But at the same time, you have to be a little more careful when you talk to a matchmaker. Good question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's end off with a famous quote, right? It's a very important quote, something that we have to think about all the time. Actually, I want to finish off with two quotes, right? Because we didn't do the quote on page 201, so I think it's a very important quote, right? So we're going to read the quote on 201 and 203, right? The quote on 201 is from Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital was the prime student of the Arizal, the great Kabbalist Arizal, right? He wrote most of his writings, right? So he's quoting over here from the Arizal: before praying, one should accept on himself the mitzvah of loving each and every Jew like himself. For by doing so, his prayers will be included in those of all of Klal Yisrael. It's every time we go ahead and we daven, right? And that's the idea of davening with a minyan, right? When we're davening by ourselves, right, we're just relying just on ourselves. When we're davening with a minyan, right, our prayer goes up as not an individual prayer. It's God looks at our own prayer, but it goes up as with the group. And as Klal Yisrael, as the Jewish people, as a group, we have much more power, right? That we have much more, things are accepted more. We're not necessarily being looked at as an individual on our, because who doesn't have transgressions? I mean, maybe you guys, you're all tzaddikim and tzaddikos and righteous people, right? But who doesn't have some transgressions, right? So when we daven the minyan, our prayer is going up as a group, right? So he's saying that when one accepts upon himself before he davens, before he prays, right, that mitzvah of loving each Jew, v'hafta l'reacha kamocha, which is a mitzvah, a verse in the Torah, right? Wasn't said by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva just said that it's a klal gadol Torah. It's a great rule in the Torah. It's one of those trivias that unfortunately sometimes people mix up because of the song, right? Of the statement, right? But Rabbi Akiva did not say that. Rabbi Akiva just said that it's a great rule of the Torah. It's a verse in the Torah. V'hafta l'reacha kamocha, you should love your neighbor as yourself. Right. So when one accepts that upon himself before he prays, so even if he's praying individually, right, it's not the same level as if you're praying with a group. And if you are praying with a group, it intensifies that your prayer as a prayer that's included with all the Jewish people and not an individual prayer. Right. And then the next quote is from the Mishil Shisharim, Path of the Righteous, right? That he says like this: Hashem loves only those who love the Jewish people. And the more one increases his Havat Yisrael, the love for his fellow Jew, the more love Hashem shows upon him. All right. So the translation's a little loose, right? But what it means to say Hashem shows his love. Of course, God loves all his creatures, right? He created all of us. But just like parents, right, we love all our children, and sometimes we have to discipline them. Sometimes it's hard to show that love sometimes when they really act really bad, right? Let's be honest, right? We have a deep love for them, right? For everybody, but sometimes we have to show a stern face because they're not behaving properly, right? When a little kid does it, it's hard to show that stern face sometimes because you just crack up because they're so cute, and you try to discipline them, but you break up. Laugh, right? But that's more little kids, right? When older kids do things, or so you have to show that stern face. You have to discipline them, right? So the Sharm is telling us a tremendous insight and a skula, a merit, and something to reflect on. That the more we show love to our fellow Jew, right, the more God shows love to us. It's like it's a reflection, right? Because God just like parents don't want their kids fighting, right? So even if they did something wrong, but if there's a unity amongst the children, parents are very happy, right? And they're very gladdened about that. And unless they did something really, really bad, right? A lot of times, if it's if they're not fighting, you're calmer and you still have that smile, and you still will discipline them with a smile, or you might look the other way sometimes, right? Because you see children getting along, which is a tremendous enjoyment, that we all want to have. So too, kaviyachol, right? In a metaphorical way, that's the same thing with Hashem, right? Hashem acts in that way to us to encourage us to build up our Ahavat Yisrael, our love for our fellow Jews. So, and the more we build up our love for our fellow Jew, the more we work on this, it's so much easier, as we spoke about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and the more we work on that, the more it's easier to forgive other people, right? The more it's easier to look the other way when you hear something, the more it's easier to judge someone favorably and not see the negative in something, right? But to see the positive in something, right? And the closer we get to the coming Mashiach, because as we know, the second temple was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, because of baseless hatred. I'm going to stop the recording.